So when you did enlist on June 30th, 1975, what were you thinking? He's smiling. This is radio. He's smiling.
Yeah, this is a good story.
Good.
So this goes back to, why did I join the Army? And, so I was a senior in high school. I was academic, kind of expected to go on and go to college. But, reality sets in. I knew that I wasn't going to get an academic scholarship. I was a great baseball player. I mean, my dreams were to, play center field for the New York Yankees. But I knew I wasn't going to get an athletic scholarship to go to school. So, of course, my girlfriend and I, we were dating at that time. Both of us were seniors in high school. And so we talked about all the things that we wanted to do in life. And so I made the decision in February of 1975 to join the Army. And my intent was to go in the Army, spend my 4 years, get out, go to college, and become an architect. So I took the oath of enlistment in March of 75, so I was delayed entry. And like I said, graduated the end of May and went in the Army in June. And in between that, got married. So as I went in as a married soldier.
Busy dude. You still married to the same lady?
Still married. Yeah, so here it is now, 44 years later, 3 children.
8 grandchildren.
8 grandchildren. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you read my bio.
You were only going to stay 4 years. You stayed 36 years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I never in my wildest dreams would I have thought I was going to make the Army a career. And there was a point in there where, I was going to get out. My first duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. And this is one of the things that we talked about. And, growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, and these are, small little towns tucked away in the mountains back there. Really, we wanted to see the world. And so I intentionally picked Texas as my first duty station. So Fort Hood, Texas was where I went to first Cavalry Division. Arrived there in November of 1975. And so after I finished initial entry training at Fort Knox, literally I went back to Maryland, packed up my wife, and we had a station wagon. I still remember it. It was a 1971 Ford Country sedan wagon that, and off we went. We drove to Texas. My mom rode with us because she was worried about us. We're both 18 years old. So I reported into my unit, and so the 2nd Battalion, 8th Cav at that time was an experimental unit. The 1st Cavalry Division had just come out of Vietnam. They were an air cav division in Vietnam, and they had just gone through this transformation to be a ground maneuver division, which is what they are today. And of course, while we were there, we were doing a lot of testing for the Army to determine what the Army needed to look like for the Cold War. So we were experimenting with, at that time, there were 5 tanks in a tank platoon, and we were experimenting with 3 tanks in a tank platoon. We had dune buggies, we had motorcycles, for our reconnaissance elements. We also did some testing for the Army. The basic armor reliability test, the BART test as it was called, was designed to determine if it was better to invest money into the older tank systems, or did we now have to invest and build what we now have today as the Abrams tank. So, so we had, the M48 A5 tanks. We had M60 A1s.
Well, no wonder you stayed in. You had like a million toys you just listed.
It was.
I mean, my husband would go crazy with dune buggies and guns.
It was. And, as I tell everybody, because I was a scout for a while, and, the Army was paying me to ride dirt bikes.
But this is 1975. You weren't deployed, I think you said a minute ago, until 2003 or 2004. So what did you do for 20 years besides ride dune buggies and play with guns?
So what the Army does is it's all about readiness, and it's training, and it's growing leaders. And, for me, I was, I rose through the ranks very quickly, and, as a young specialist and then a sergeant, I reached the rank of sergeant at 2 years. And, as a leader of that unit, you're training and you're growing the next generation of soldiers that are coming in behind you. And this is one of the things that I learned. I mean, if you would have told me when I was in high school, because I was very much an introvert, I was the quiet, shy kid that sat all the way in the back of the classroom, and even with kids that I had been in school with since I was 6 years old. My high school went from 1st grade to 12th grade. When I was a senior in high school, we had 78 in our graduating class. There was only about 830 kids in the whole school. So even though I was in school with kids of, I'd known since I was 6. I'd known my wife since she was 6. I was afraid to stand up and, speak publicly in the classroom. And one of the things that the Army did for me was it gave me that confidence. And it really comes down to confidence and, the commitment to be able to do things, to be able to teach, to be able to take what I had learned as a young private, as a private first class, and as a specialist, and now take that knowledge and use it to grow that next generation of soldiers that were coming in behind me.
How do you teach a soldier to learn to harness his fears?
It's the best way to do that is repetition. And see, this gets into your question about what was I doing for 20 years, and just take like the BART test that we did. Okay, so we would spend about 30 days out in the field training. Okay, so with tanks, you've got maneuver, you've got gunnery. So you go through and you do the training on that equipment, and then you would come back in. We'd have about 2 weeks to reset the equipment, and then we'd be gone again for another 45 days. So when you live and work on a piece of equipment, you know that piece of equipment like the back of your hand.
It's like driving a car. Nobody has to tell me to step on the brake.
Sure, and that's as an individual operator. Okay, so as an operator, but imagine now a tank is what I call is like a giant robot, and you have 4 operators inside that vehicle, and all 4 of those people have to know what the other person's thinking and doing. The driver has to know when to keep a steady platform while the gunner is trying to engage and lay onto another target, while the tank commander is giving a fire command and directions for the loader, and at the same time firing a 50 caliber machine gun on top. So you have all these different things going on, and literally you have seconds to react. And on the battlefield, in tank-on-tank warfare, if you're exposed and you're out in the open, you have about 10 seconds. And so it takes a lot of training to become very, very competent and proficient with that piece of equipment.
If I was a new recruit signing up today, how long would it take me to get trained?
Well, you would start out, and it'd be progressive. It's interesting. I had one of these. I was asked this question, back in 1978. I went before the Sergeant Morales Club board, and at that time, we were opening some of the positions in the Army. Artillery, as an example, was being opened to women to be served, and I was asked that exact question about, how would women coming into the organization, learn the things that I knew as a tank commander? And I said, well, you start out as a loader on the tank. And you learn the responsibilities of being a loader, just like driving a car. And of course, it's going through doing multiple field problems and gunneries. And of course, then as you get promoted, then you get moved up to become the driver. And then you get to be the driver. Now you're driving, hundreds of miles cross country and, road marches and all the rest of it. So, you already now know what the loader does, and you learn what the driver does. And then you move up and you become the gunner. And of course, as you're the gunner, now you're kind of coaching and mentoring the driver. You're coaching and mentoring the loader.
Over how long a period of time does this take you to do this? A year?
For each of these positions?
Or to get, to move through the progression?
No. It takes years.
Oh, years?
So for me to grow from, and I was a fast mover. At the time, 1975 in the Army, we were probably manned at about maybe 60% strength at Fort Hood, maybe a little bit above that. But so there was lots of opportunities to get promoted. There was always vacancies, and I was always in, a position that was more senior to me. So I had the opportunity to step up as a young specialist and be the gunner on a tank. Usually the gunner, the lowest rank would be like a sergeant. But I was a gunner on the battalion commander's tank as a specialist. And so when you're doing lots of things and you're very, very active, you learn through experience.
The definition of a leader is a person who's always improving everywhere. Their surroundings, their processes, their relationships. I don't think that leaders can stop improving on everything around themselves. Yes?
No, I was, one of the other things I'll leave you with is a thought. And, and that piece about improving yourselves is, one of the things we used to teach was the 11 traits of being a leader.
Oh.
And one of those, lead by example. But the other one I'll leave you with that I found being very important was know yourself and seek self-improvement. And to be a good evaluator of yourself and to know your weaknesses and know your strengths. And while it's good to capitalize on the strengths, the weaknesses you have to work on really hard.
Vince Lombardi said, "Leaders are made; they are not born."
That's correct. They're grown, and that's one of the things that I love about the Army is how we grow and develop leaders. And I'm a classic example of just being the average soldier, who grew up in small town USA, who came in the Army, and the Army gave me lots of opportunities. It changed my life. It changed my family's life.
If you could do it over again, what would you do different?
I don't think I'd change anything. Even now, you look back on the mistakes that you make. One of the things that I love about the Army is you make mistakes, but they pick you up, they dust you off, they say, okay, don't do that again, and you learn from those mistakes and you move forward.
You've been listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. For links to resources you heard discussed on today's show, go to flagandbanner.com, select Radio Show, and choose today's guest. All interviews are recorded and posted the following week. Subscribe to podcasts wherever you like to listen. Kerry's goal is simple: to help you live the American dream.